some keen beans and some eager beavers. We're all ready to get going again this year. So it's so lovely to have you all back. We've got some newcomers as well. So welcome. If you've not joined Drinks with Kate before, then hopefully this will all make sense. Sometimes we have some technical issues, but hopefully tonight we won't. Hello, Sarah and all the tricks. How you going? Lovely to see everyone. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the club. Michael's new. Great to have you on board. What fun. What fun. Okay, so we've already had some questions even before we've started. I've had some beautiful photographs sent to me of some pretty terrific looking salade niçoise, and we're going to talk all about the unique fun and dangers of trying to match wine to salads. Yes, Paul and Ros, hopefully we are over all the technical issues now. I hope everyone's had a lovely summer and a nice break. We certainly have here. It's been hot for a little while, which is novel in this part of the world over the last couple of years. And we've been busy at Cellar Door, which has been great. Oh, hello, Jeff and Sue. Lovely to see you. Welcome back to you too. We've got Polly over there. So none of the dogs are playing. Hello, Sam's twins. Have you knocked Sam off the computer, have you? Hello to all the Cross family. Lovely to see you. Right, so just so that the people who have just joined us don't get bored with all of our rabbiting on, I should probably get some wine in our glasses before I go into a long diatribe about summer and 2022 and all that kind of thing. So let's get started. Hopefully you have your bottle of 2018 Moorooduc Estate Chardonnay. Oh, hello. If you don't have the wine and you're joining in anyway, that's awesome. Get yourself a glass of something that you feel like drinking, whether it be a glass of wine, Moorooduc or otherwise, it doesn't matter, a gin and tonic, a vodka and soda, a beer, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, glass of white water, whatever you like. For the newcomers, and also as a reminder for all of you who've been doing this with me for a while, I always recommend that you have a nice big glass of water with you, because this is an opportunity for us to drink some wine, but it's also good to keep hydrating and we call it a tasting, at least from the beginning. So hello, Rob and Deb, lovely to see you. I've had so much fun with Rob and Deb's produce from their garden in the last few days. Plum sauce, pickled cucumbers, all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, glassware. Now, again, those of you who've been here for a while, and that's most of you, will already have your glasses that you like to use. And I think for Chardonnay, it's a lot of you will have got used to the fact that I like to use a Pinot Noir glass for my Chardonnay. So that's my Pinot Noir glass. Alternately, a more classic shaped glass, that's a Sangiovese Riedel glass, works just as well. The difference that you'll see between the two glasses is this wine will keep the wine sort of tighter and finer or more minerally for longer. This will allow the aromas and flavours to open up faster. And being a wine that's relatively young, it's quite nice to get things opening up in the glass. I had a question about decanting the wine. And I probably wouldn't bother, but because I'm using a big glass. But if you don't have a big glass, or if you really want to get into the wine a bit quicker, then absolutely just before you're going to drink it, get it open and get it into a decanter. So let's get this thing happening. I know that Craig and Joan and Karen are already drinking. Hopefully the rest of you are too. But if you're not, join me now. Wine in glass. There we go. 2018 Moorooduc Estate Chardonnay. So now we have some in our glass, we can relax. Penny, hello, how are you? Lovely to see you. Oh, you got your salad niçoise going tonight? I thought, it's been warm for a few weeks, and I do love a good salad in summer, and a salad niçoise is particularly special composed salad, and you can add and take away as you like. And we'll talk about the food a little bit more in a minute. Let's talk about the wine first. So 2018 Chardonnay, we did look at it towards the end of last year. So it's not going to be a new wine for you, but I do think even after sort of 3 months or so aging in the bottle, it's going to be looking different again. And at this time of year, with the warm weather, you probably want to serve it a little bit cooler than we would serve it in springtime when the ambient temperature of the room was a bit cooler. So there's lots of little changes. What I would say, I took this wine out of the fridge about 15 minutes ago. It's maybe a little bit cold, but that's another advantage of the big glass, is that I can give it a swirl around, get some air into it, and I can use my hot little hands to warm it up if it's too cold. So I'm going to be very controlled and talk to you about the wine first, and then we'll get into our gossip and chatting afterwards. So please feel free to ask questions. I apologise to anyone who's heard me say these things before, but hopefully there'll be some new information in here as well. And I think just if you know, if I'm being a bit boring for a few minutes, just sit back, sip your wine. We'll come back, and it'll be exciting again very soon, I'm sure. Okay, so the colour is starting to develop. We've got a little bit more depth to the colour than we were seeing 6 months ago or so, which is interesting. Sometimes our Chardonnays develop colour faster, sometimes they develop it more slowly. It just depends on the year, and it depends on what's going on in the glass. So I'm very happy with that kind of level of kind of green gold in the glass there for a 2018 Chardonnay. This is current release at Moorooduc Estate. So if you've been down to Cellar Door in the last few months, then you probably will have tried this wine at Cellar Door. Again, one of the things that I love about Drinks with Kate is that instead of sitting down in Cellar Door for maybe half an hour and tasting 6 different wines and sort of whipping through them and then moving on to another Cellar Door, this way we sit down, we have a glass of wine, we have a good chat, we taste it with food, we talk about how it works with the food flavours and things like that. It's getting to know the wine in a much more intimate fashion than we do at a classic tasting. So I probably should smell and taste the wine as well. So give it a little swirl. You'll notice I've been quite generous to myself because it's been a big week and I feel the need for a lovely glass of Chardonnay. And I'm glad, Craig, that you're enjoying the Chardonnay. I think this is a beautiful wine. 2018 was a really lovely vintage. It was a pretty perfect vintage. It was sort of a nice amount of fruit set and ripened slowly. There's lovely flavour development. And one of the things about Moorooduc Estate Chardonnay that you may or may not know is that we work very hard to find a balance between elegance and complexity, freshness and depth. So we're not trying to make a really early picked style Chardonnay that's really lemony when it's young. Hello, Anne. What are you having? Oh, sushi platter. Fantastic. And I think we've got someone, I don't know who Langston Davida is, but we might just, that looks like not silly gobbledygook. So what we're looking for in the fruit aroma, and that I see very nicely in this wine, is a combination of citrus fruit, some lemon. Oh, hello, Shell. Crispy skin barbecue salmon with salad and spice. Fantastic. Good work. Combination of citrus fruit, so lemon. And when we talk about lemon and when we think about aromas, when we've got this sort of time to spend with the wine, we can delve a bit more deeply into the sort of the different nuances of lemon. And for me, this has got a real kind of lemon oil, lemon rind kind of character to it. There's also a slightly more developed, almost like preserved lemon aromatic in there, slightly salty note. Which we often get in our Chardonnays from Moorooduc Estate, and you'll see more on the palate, I think, and maybe a little bit of sort of just slightly warmed. You know, when you get lemon and you stick it on the barbecue and give it a bit of a grill, and it kind of warms. It's not cooked, but you get the juice slightly warmed, and the aromas become a bit rounder and a bit richer. And I'm sort of definitely seeing it there. Rob and Dem having it against the 2020 Devil Bend Creek. Fantastic, yum. As well as lemon, citrus. We're always looking for some peachiness, but we don't want too much. A little bit of white peach, white nectarine, which I see there. And then there's some winemaking artifice, which comes from the time that the wine spends in barrel. So very simple winemaking here at Moorooduc. We pick the grapes by hand, whole bunches into the press. We press them. The cloudy juice goes straight to barrel. And then the wine is fermented in barrels, so don't fill the barrels up too full because otherwise they bubble over. Natural yeast fermentation, so we don't add any yeast. Once the fermentation's finished, then we top it up, put them away, and we check them maybe once a month, give them a little stir, give them a little top up, make sure that nothing's going horribly wrong. And the wine goes through a slow, natural malolactic fermentation, if it wants to, over about 8 months. And after that 8 months, then we get the wine ready for bottling. It's really simple. And it means that we get some winemaking character from the barrels, and we only use a small amount of new oak. So we're not looking for lots of cedary, vanilla-y character, but there's just a little nuance of that in the background. We also see some sort of bready, yeasty, little bit of honey character from the malolactic fermentation and the time on lees, which we think is really important for Chardonnay to give it that weight and body and texture. It's also those lovely, that lovely texture, those lovely phenolics that we talk about on the palate, which I haven't put in my mouth yet. So I know that they're there though, and I'm looking forward to tasting them. Paul and Rose, the saltiness is a funny thing that people kind of get a bit confused about. Whether that's supposed to be there and whether it's maybe, but it is definitely there, and it just kind of hints away in the background. Michael, lovely to see you. Fantastic to have you back with the show. That's all right. I know that you're going away soon, but awesome to be having a South African Shannon. Thank you for dropping in and saying hello. And, if you get, jet lag and you can't sleep at night wherever you're going, then you can always log into Drinks with Kate on a Thursday from wherever you are. It'd be lovely to hear a report of the outside world as well if you ever have time. Craig, comparatively low in acid, or is the lemon confusing the issue? Let me put it in my mouth and I will answer that question, Craig. So I'm not sure what we're comparing it to, Craig. Compared to a lot of modern Australian Chardonnays, yes, the acid is a little softer. We get really good natural acidity in our Chardonnay. And we buck the current trend of not allowing Chardonnay to go through malolactic fermentation because most modern Chardonnay producers are worried that the wine will become too soft. Now we're very familiar with the sort of acid levels that we get in our juice from our vineyards in a normal year, and 2018 was a pretty normal year, but nice ripening. So you've got lots of flavour development, which also adds to softening that acidity, sensation of acidity on the palate. But that one's got really good natural acidity. Actually, it's just got some plumpness and the malolactic conversion. So changing malic acid, that green apple acid that you get in a lot of young Chardonnays these days, and then that changes it to lactic acid, which is the acid that you get in milk and cream. It tends to give the wine a softness and a roundness in the mid-palate. I agree with you, Michael. We love MLF in the right wines from the right places. And one of the fabulous things about the Mornington Peninsula is that because we're surrounded by cool water on three sides, being a peninsula, we have this unique maritime climate, which is different from anywhere else in Australia. And it allows us to maintain beautiful natural acidity, especially in our Chardonnay, without having to pick early. And so Craig, a lot of those wines, other Australian Chardonnays and probably slightly racier, more fashionable styles of Australian Chardonnay will have, as Michael says, they can be really good, but often people sort of go on the knife edge and they pick the wine sometimes with too much acid and sometimes with not enough varietal flavour development. So it's one of the things that we really love. We love Chardonnay that tastes like Chardonnay, it also has to have some texture. That's really important to us. And we get texture from the wild ferment, from the MLF, from the time in barrel on full lees. From a little bit, we do very gentle stirring only once a month when we're topping up the barrels, and that's just to kind of mix everything around so that everything's kind of safe. It's not about really trying to break down the yeast lees too much. So we're not looking to get too much of that yeast lees character in the wine, but it's all about texture. It's all about kind of layering subtle layers of flavour and complexity to delight all of the senses. So that's sort of the philosophy and the thought behind this wine. What else? Who else? Cotty asked if the saltiness is a maritime influence. I think, Cotty, we do see it in quite a lot of Mornington Peninsula wines. I think it's probably not from the salt in the air kind of blowing in from the sea, which is sort of quite a romantic, fanciful thing that I've heard quite a lot in Spain and on the coast, Mediterranean coast. You know, it's this lovely story of, oh yes, our vineyards are very close to the sea, and so the salt blows in on the air and it makes the wine taste salty. But I do think there's something in the soil, and the soil here on the Mornington Peninsula is ancient seabed soil, and I think that there is that extra salinity in the soil. You know, we have a lot of issues with salinity coming up to the surface in Australia, and I think that we're seeing that slight saltiness coming up through the vines into the wine, and it is a very distinctive Mornington Peninsula Chardonnay character. Sharpie and Rod, lovely to see you. You haven't missed too much. We're enjoying the Chardonnay. We're just talking about salinity and things like that. Joel, lovely to see you and welcome. And Chardonnay with a burger is absolutely fine. You know, we're pretty eclectic about how we match food and wine. And in fact, I reckon we might have to have a burger night one of these nights to talk about bits and pieces that go into a burger that will either challenge or work well with different wine styles. I think that'd be lots of fun. Michael, are you having the Smith's cheese and onion chips? Is that what you're admitting to there? Or are you just saying that Joel's done better than that? Plain crisps are good. Hello, Jeff. Oh, your phone died, but oh, okay, great. Welcome. Hi. Hope you've got some wine. I don't know if you remember to take a bottle home with you. Hello, Nina. How you going? Is Peter home? Anyway, Peter has the wine for you. So when you're ready to go, then you can enjoy it. Cheers. Nice to see everyone coming up on the screen. It's awesome. Yeah, Sharpie and Rod. I had work Zooms that ran over this morning. It was a work Zoom. It was a Zoom with some with a board that I'm on in a group. Not a board, it's a committee. Not that important. A committee that I'm on with people in Europe and in America. So I always have to do the early morning run, and they do the late night, middle of the day, whatever run. Anyway, lots of fun. Penny, I love you. It is not a multilateral nuclear force. MLF stands for malolactic fermentation. And that's okay, Nina. You can just think about the wine, and when it arrives home, then it'll be even more delicious. So yes, Penny, malolactic fermentation is that secondary conversion of acid. And there's two naturally occurring acids in grape juice. There's malic acid, which is also the acid that you find in green apples, which is why a lot of wines that have been through a malolactic conversion taste a bit like green apples. They have that appley smell, and they have that really tangy green apple acid. Lactic acid is what malic acid changes to when that acid is put through the malolactic conversion, and that's what we're talking about with the Chardonnay. It's something that you have to do with red wine making, and it's optional for certain styles of white wine. And in fact, you do see it. A lot of people assume that it's just Chardonnay in the white wine family that people play around with malolactic fermentation. But in some parts of the world, like Alsace, where they have incredibly high acidity, they'll sometimes put their Rieslings and all of their whites through malolactic fermentation. And it doesn't make a huge change to the shape of the wine in the way that it does. If you think about the reason that Australians are so sort of allergic to the concept of malolactic fermentation is that back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of Chardonnay grown in warm climates, and it was allowed to get too ripe. So you got really pineapple-y fruit flavors. And then it was put through a full malolactic fermentation, because that's what they did in America, because the Americans learned how to do it from going to Burgundy and seeing how they did it in Burgundy. But the fruit profile was so completely different that we made these great, big, rich, butterscotchy, pineapple-y, buttery, and then oak as well, so vanilla-y, oaky Chardonnays. And it put a lot of people off Chardonnay from Australia for a little while back in about 2006 to 2010. We've come back, and a lot of people are really worried about putting any of their wine through malolactic fermentation. But if you've got a cool climate and you've got really good natural acid, and you know how much of the acid, the percentage of acid is malic acid, then it can be a really good thing to do, and we like to allow it to do. Okay, questions. First of all, Craig, congratulations for your Wesset 3. Well done, that's awesome. I look forward to sharing the Barolo with you and Jeff. Don't leave me out. That's really awesome, well done. We look forward to seeing you in Diploma soon. Emily, when we're talking about the shape of the wine, it's really about the structure of the wine, I guess. So when we talk about structure, shape, balance, all those kind of things, we're talking about how the fruit expression, how the acid and alcohol all meld together on the palate. And you can, sorry, Peter and Karen are distracting me. So it's sort of the way the wine travels across the palate, and when I'm talking about shape. So this Chardonnay has got, the alcohol is, it's not low, it's 13.5%. So there's quite a lot of alcohol there, but there's also a lot of fruit intensity and richness. So the alcohol and the fruit balance each other. And then the acid comes in to push the wine through the palate and make it not sort of cloying and fat and unappealing. So acid works a bit like a corset with wine. It kind of squeezes it in and lengthens it out and gives it a really nice profile, if that makes sense. And if you've got lots and lots of acid, particularly if it's all malic acid and citric and tartaric acid, which is the other acid in wine, then it's a tighter corset. The wine is narrower and harder and more linear, and can feel it sort of travels across the palate differently. Whereas this wine has that little bit of softness and roundness to it, so it sort of gets in the mouth and it coats all the mouth, and you get all these flavors that kind of go. I'm getting a corset too, Michael. It's the only way to cope with 2 years of lockdown. Getting out into being in public again is very traumatizing, having to get out of my elastic waisted pants. Anyway, that's totally different. That's a totally different story. Daryl and Sue, welcome. Glad that you made it eventually. Rob and Deb, MLF is something you can invoke or something you can suppress. So MLF, it happens because of a bug, and often winemakers will buy the bug. Thank you. Is that Nareem or Keely talking about little red corsets? So a lot of winemakers, if they want the malolactic fermentation to go through, they'll buy the malo bug from a laboratory and they'll add it to the wine at the time that they want the wine to go through. A lot of winemakers will suppress it by sulfuring the wine early. As soon as the wine has fermented, if you add sulfur, then you kill off any of the natural bugs, and then nothing can happen. What we do is neither of those things. We don't buy MLF bugs to add to the wine, but we also don't sulfur the wine after the ferments are finished. We leave the wine unsulfured for those 8 months. And that means that we allow as much malolactic fermentation to happen as wants to with our white wines. So excellent. So yes, so I hope that all makes sense. I hope that made sense, talking about the shape of wine and that kind of thing. Craig, yes, party at Cellar Door, give us some notice. That sounds awesome. We might even be able to find some snacks to go with your Barolo to celebrate. it is layered. It's got a lot of depth, lots of flavour, and it has this lovely line to it, both flavour line and acid line, that makes it feel really clean and fresh. And that salty tang just comes in at the end as well. So why did I match it to a salad niçoise? Well, for those of you who are eating your salad niçoise with your Chardonnay right now, love to hear how it's working. I think it's a great match as long as you're able to cope with some very different flavour combinations at the same time in your mouth. Oh, Michael, the amount of MLF, does the amount of MLF change from year to year? It might change subtly, and it's one of the reasons that we do filter and fine our white wines before we bottle them, because we never know whether they've gone through 100%. We don't have the equipment to analyze exactly how much Malo's gone through. We have a pretty good idea. We have some equipment that allows us to see that it's, you know, gone through basically, but you might find that there's sometimes a little bit of malic acid still in the wine, and sometimes it's all been converted. And on occasions, on a year where things are not normal, 2011 was a very good example of a very not normal year, and it is potentially going to be an issue this year, but the warmth that we've had over the last month is helping to kick things along. But the way the grapes ripened in 2011, we decided to suppress malolactic fermentation in some of the Chardonnays. So it was a percentage of MLF rather than 100%. But normally it's about 100%. It means that the wine finds its own natural stability as well, which we think is great. So the salad, it's a really, Craig, I'll answer your question in a minute, I promise. But just a very quick little discussion of the salad niçoise, because it is quite a complex amalgam of flavours. So you've got your salad leaves, fine, awesome. You've then got green beans, which have a very distinctive character, and Shell is saying a surprising partnership with green beans. Surprisingly good or surprisingly surprising? I'm always, it's like when people say interesting, I'm never sure whether that's good or not really. I think, Penny, if your tuna chunks have been in chili infused oil, that's going to add an extra level of complexity, and also the chili will fight with the Chardonnay a little bit. It depends how sensitive you are to these things, but we'll give it a go. I think usually chili infused tuna isn't terribly spicy, but I think that the things that I think, you know, Kay's got sweet potato in hers rather than normal potato, and that would bring extra sweetness to the salad, which I think would be really nice. Whereas a normal potato in the salad will pick up, will be textural, and will pick up the sort of the vinaigrette and the saltiness of the olives and the anchovies if you put anchovies in. And I do think anchovies and black olives are a really good match. They don't clash with the wine, but the wine and the anchovies and olives kind of bring out different things in each other and sort of accentuate their difference, and the saltiness and the fishiness and the oliviness, which is quite fun. But then tomatoes are also really hard to match to wine. So the tomatoes can be difficult, but the tuna, as I think Kay has said, the tuna is really interesting by itself. It's okay, but when it's all mixed up with all the other flavors, if you've got some cucumber in there as well, then that'll bring some coolness and some wateriness. But egg's really hard. So if you're just having a piece of egg and then the wine, then egg and wine are a really difficult match by themselves. But again, if you just get a bit of the egg and then your dressing and your potatoes and your lettuce and your olives and, you know, just a little bit of everything on the fork, and then stick that all in your mouth and then have some wine, it actually, the complexity of the salad works really well with the complexity of the wine. So Jeff has gone for Gruyere, funny that. And we all know that it is a great match for Chardonnay. But for those of you who haven't joined us before, Michael, it's a bit of a running joke with this group that if in doubt, go for Gruyere. Chardonnay, and if in doubt, go for Manchego with Pinot Noir. So, and we've got a few other running jokes. I think focaccia played a pretty intense role in some of the tastings in the last 2 years. I'm not sure how many people have got time to be making focaccia on a regular basis anymore now that we're back out in the world. But yeah, I think Penny, I love pouring the dressing over the warm potatoes too, because it sucks up all the flavour. And you'd think that the vinegariness of a dressing would really fight with the Chardonnay. And if you just had some dressing, if you just kind of put some dressing on your finger and then ate it and then had the wine, it doesn't work at all. But in the same way that the acid in the wine is softened by the other flavors in the wine, the acid in the dressing kind of is softened and adds complexity and brings out the flavors of all of the things in the salad. So it's a really fun combination with that. Emily, I'm glad it's working with your Kalamata olives. I'm a bit of a sucker for a Kalamata olive, and am known to eat things that are not supposed to go with wine, like olives and pickles and all sorts of things, but they do work very well. Michael, just going back to your comment from a little while back, I'm glad you like the fact that use of Malo is natural. It's one of the things that's really important for us, is to, as we've progressed as winemakers, and something else that I have to announce today, because we're going to have to plan. There's a few reasons to celebrate this year. The main reason is that this year, 2022, marks 40 years since Jill and Richard bought this piece of land to turn it into Moorooduc Estate. It was a big empty paddock. So everything that you see when you come here now, we've put here. But I think 40 years is pretty amazing. And so we're looking to put together a little program of events after vintage later in the year to celebrate that. So just pencil that into your diaries. Yeah, it does look like I'm getting hacked, Craig. I'm hoping that that's not going to be a problem for us. I'm just ignoring them at the moment and hoping they'll go away. I might get some advice after this session to see if there's anything I need to do about that. But this is the first time this has happened. So, yeah, even the bots like the wine. Rob and Deb, bit of truffle brie and quince paste. How delicious. Thank you, Michael. Also, I'm having a significant birthday later in this year. So then there's another excuse to party. But, you know, we always find an excuse to party if we try hard enough. Okay, should I be doing that, or will that can block them? Jeff, can you block them for me, please? It's my lovely assistant, Jeff. Joel, that's fantastic. Careful, someone might block you, Joel. They'll think you're a bot. Joel's real. I just spoke to him today. So yes, so a few excuses for parties. Also, the fact that we actually can do some lunches here and tastings and things. We're working on a calendar of events once I can actually pin Jill down. Everyone's been really busy. Oh, also, now that we've talked about the wine and the food, please ask more questions about the wine if you'd like to. 2021, Michael, are you asking about the vintage of 2021? We're very excited about the wines from 2021. They are looking really fabulous, and things have been bottled recently, so we won't be releasing them for a little while. 21, yes. 21. No, I'm a little shocked to discover that I'm turning 50 this year, which is a bit outrageous. But anyway, we're only as old as we think we are, or something like that. So, thank you, though. Very sweet. Yes, as I was saying, 2021 vintage, very good. 1972 was my birth year, and it was a terrible vintage for wine. So don't even go trying to find me wines from 1972, because they're all terrible. It is a milestone birthday, and I'm very excited. Ruby anniversary. Any wine that's ruby coloured will make me very happy. For 72 babies do rule, Craig, and it does mean I think 72 is a terrible vintage for wine almost everywhere in the world. It was an excellent vintage for human beings, and also means that we don't have to spend lots of money on buying wine from our birth year. We can just drink what we feel like. So I think that's also good. I know, Michael, it is very exciting. I don't know. I think, the whole, it shocks me that this was a paddock 40 years ago and now it's a mature vineyard and house and cellar door and, home for peacocks and chickens and cats and poodles and cockatoos and magpies. But, it's all pretty exciting, and hopefully 2022 vintage will also be exciting. So that's something that we'll be sharing over the next few weeks. We think we'll probably be starting towards the end of February or maybe even the first week of March. We're not really sure. We're just kind of keeping an eye on things. Veraison, which is the colour change that happens in the grapes, which means that we have to put the nets on so that the birds don't eat them. Veraison's well and truly happened. So everything's under net. The poodles are sulky because they're not allowed off the lead out in the vineyard anymore because they take off and don't come back forever. Which month, Craig? August. I'm a Leo. Joel doesn't drink much Chardonnay. How does the 2018 differ from other usual Chardonnays? Yeah, you missed the kind of discussion of the characters, but for me, Joel, this wine, compared to a lot of modern Australian Chardonnays, it's a little riper in its flavour profile. So we're seeing some lemon fruit, we're seeing some white peach and white nectarine, and then some honey and some little salty notes which come from the soil, and some creamy, slightly honeyed characters from the winemaking. So it's quite a big, rich Chardonnay, but with really nice natural acidity compared to a lot of modern Australian Chardonnays, which you picked a little bit earlier. They still have that lemony character, but it's kind of a leaner, kind of more kind of powdery lemon character, sometimes grapefruit. They can be, if they're picked too early, they can be a bit herbal and a little bit grassy. If they're picked just right on the cusp, they can be really exciting and kind of tangy, and but sort of a bit searing in their acid line and a bit sort of hard work when they're young. Whereas this wine, it's not that young, it's 4 years old, but we like to hold it back for a little while because we think with the level of complexity and depth to the wine, releasing this wine now is appropriate. We've been selling the 2018 Chardonnay for about 6 months now, which is pretty much perfect target for us. Hello, Cheryl. Welcome. Good to see you. At least hopefully you're having a glass of wine as well. Yeah. So Joel, I think that a lot of people expect Chardonnay, if they haven't had Chardonnay for a long time, they expect it to be big and pineapple-y and kind of over the top, which everyone got sick of after the 80s and 90s were finished. Or they expect it to be really lean and almost mean in its expression. And this one's somewhere in between. It's got that lovely acid line, but that generosity of flavour. What was I saying before that? I've lost my track. I've got out of practice of this, answering questions and keeping my train of thought. But yeah, I think this one's looking, it's also got this little aniseed note that comes up after it's been open for a little while, which I find really intriguing. Not really sure where it comes from. There's a bit of a fennel aniseed kind of spiciness to it, which I think is really lovely. I think Craig asked about this compared to the 2018 Robinson and McIntyre Chardonnay. And just to remind people, this estate Chardonnay is a combination of fruit from the McIntyre vineyard and the Robinson vineyard. The best fruit from the McIntyre vineyard comes from our oldest vines, which were planted 38 years ago. And they are about 8 years older than the younger Chardonnay vines that contribute fruit to this wine. So that extra 8 years tends to give the McIntyre Chardonnay more elegance, less fruitiness, but more power. So the McIntyre Chardonnay is looking terrific now, but it's tighter and kind of more tightly filled. But you can see that it opens up more slowly, but it's got a lot of power going on. The Robinson Chardonnay is developing really nicely. The 18 is looking beautiful because it's got that real kind of lemon sherbet and floral note to it. It's always more forward as a young wine, but with sort of more linear acidity. So the Robinson Chardonnay is really lovely as a young wine, but with more time develops a bit more complexity and weight. So So yeah, that's sort of how the 18 Robinson and McIntyre Chardonnays are looking. They're terrific, and hopefully we'll get get a chance to get together this year when we release maybe the next vintage of single vineyard Chardonnays, which will actually be the 2020s, and taste back through some vintages and really kind of, I think this is the year to do some really cool vertical tastings of different wines, and certainly definitely from the McIntyre vineyard to really celebrate that that milestone time. Shell, I'm really excited that your cats are back in the position. I hope that you've sent me a photograph, because I will be very sad if you haven't. And Craig, I'm so glad to hear that Hunter is picking away. I was actually in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago. One of the reasons that we didn't start until now was because I had to go and teach Master of Wine students how to pass MW exams in Adelaide at the end of January, that last week of January. So I was over there, and one of the students is a winemaker in Hunter. And I said, oh, gosh, you must be really cutting it fine with vintage. And he said, oh, we're picking fruit now. I've got a friend doing all the analysis and sending me the figures, and I'm picking. Like, he was just sending instructions for get that off that vineyard now and pick that now and stick it in the fridge. And so, yes, it's all happening in the Hunter. Hunter's always quite a bit earlier than the Mornington Peninsula because it's warmer. There's more humidity, there's more disease pressure. And yes, so the Hunter Chardonnays tend to get picked early, as do the Hunter Semillons, which mean that you get wines that are a bit more austere because the flavour doesn't have as long to develop, but they keep their freshness. If you leave them on for much longer, they get fat and round and they lose their acid. So that's the problem with that warmer, more humid climate that we see in Hunter. I'm glad that we have all of the Drinks with Kate animals helping out as well. It's good to see. Well, I think we've eased into that quite well, haven't we, everyone? How lovely to be having a drink with you again. It's amazing, isn't it, Michael? Just thinking back over the past 2 years, I'm very pleased to hear that I have given you hope for the future. I hope that we'll be able to keep doing this well into a world where we're allowed out in the world, because this is a really nice way to catch up with a whole lot of you who are far and wide. And I feel like, it's our little Thursday night family. So it's really super. I'm going to finish up now because it's 40 minutes, and I think we've had a lot of fun. Paul and Ros, we will organise some vertical tastings. As I said, I'm trying to bully Jill into sitting down with me, hopefully tomorrow or early next week, to get some dates in the diary. We will send those dates out to Wine Club members, which include you guys, and then those events you can put them in your diaries. I know that a lot of you are further afield than is easy to just jump in the car and drive down. So we'll give you plenty of notice to sort of book in and organise your flights and all that kind of thing. We've got to be coming out of this Omicron bubble soon, hopefully. I think we've almost all had it, haven't we? I've managed to avoid it so far. So let's see what next week brings. Thank you, everyone. Next week, we're doing 2020 Pinot Gris on skins. So my little experimental wine that has become another monster. It's so good to have you all back. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Enjoy the rest of your wine. It's been so lovely to see you all again. And thank you also, Michael, for joining, and anybody else who's new, Joel, anyone else who's new. I hope you keep coming back. We don't, there's no judgment if you just feel like going and drinking the wine by yourself in a corner or with actual friends in the same space. It's all good. But anyway, I'll see you all next week. Take care. Thank you very much. And good night. Happy Thursday with that button.